Hello, good morning. I'm Kendall, and this is Kendall Writes a Story. This morning I thought I would invite you along on my morning walk to share not just the nice flowers and views, but my thoughts on Storycraft. Let me actually pull over here so that you don't have to see me bouncing all the time. Let me get a seat and then I'll share what I'm talking about. Okay, now we're sat down, so we can talk a little more in depth about Storycraft. And specifically I want to talk about story structure. So last episode we talked about the just very basic principle that stories are tension, but we didn't talk at all about how to use that tension or where to put that tension or how to build it, right? So anybody who's been in sixth grade English or has watched a course or anything has probably heard, like me, a dozen billion times that every story has a beginning, a middle, and then an end. And that never made sense to me. It just didn't make much sense to me. It's like everything has a beginning, middle, and end. Like, here's this piece of garbage that I found, and like technically it has a beginning, middle, and end, right? Because it's a whole thing. So I never understood that. So the first piece of information that kind of helped me ground that and start to understand it was beginning, middle, and end roughly translates to Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. And those are phrases we've heard that are also kind of these ethereal, at least for me, have been these sort of like ethereal things like, oh, it had a bad Act 3. I didn't really know what that meant. But at least having those two things together helps give me a little ground, right? So beginning, middle, and end, Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. And let's build it out a little more. So in your Act 1 is all about laying up the character themselves, like building who is the character, who is the world, what is the challenge that they are going up against, right? And in that, you have to introduce each character. You should be introducing, there's a theory called the six wants. So you should be introducing the six things, multiple things that they want to change in their life, right? That's what Act 1 is about. And then at the end of Act 1, the character has a very clear choice, an absolutely clear choice on whether they continue their life the way it is, which would be a boring movie that we wouldn't want to watch and wouldn't write, or they embark into the unknown. They do what is hard, usually hard, that's the point of it, and they affirmatively make a choice to embark on this journey. And that is when Act 2 starts.
Hi there, so future Kendall here. I'm here to be the illustrator. So past Kendall was explaining some things and I thought it'd be easier to illustrate. So I'm gonna go back to past Kendall now, but I'm gonna stay down here and I'm gonna help illustrate the things that he's describing.
So hopefully that makes sense so far, of three parts, beginning, middle, and end, right? In the beginning, which is your Act 1, you're building out the character, the world, the challenges they're coming up against, and most importantly, the choice they have to make. Do I embark on a journey? Do I make a change in my life? Or do I stay where I'm at? Right? Act 1. Act 2, something really cool happens at the very beginning of Act 2. It's called the B story, and I'll get back to that in 2 seconds, but just to finish our summary, right? So Act 2, you have a B story, which I'll get to, and then mainly is that promise of the premise, all the cool stuff, the gunfights, the fighting Nazis, all of that. And then Act 3 is, let's figure out what the resolution is, let's make everybody happy, let's learn our lessons so that we can all change and grow, right? That's a general structure of a story. Okay, so I want to hone in on this B story, because that is actually why I'm out here walking today. So let's go back to an Act 1. Act 1 is all about building up, and I'm going to go for a walk again. Act 1 is all about building up the characters, right? Building up the world. It's usually 15-20 minutes long. So by the end of that 15 or 20 minutes, you're pretty ready for something different. You've built out the world. And what a B story does is it gives you a refresher. It's that part in the movie, 15-20 minutes in, when the action stops and we go and learn another story. I was watching The Gladiator recently. It was on like TNT or something, like it always is. And there's a big tree. So I was watching Gladiator, and the first 20 minutes is the main character, Maximus, right, being a general. He's friends with the emperor, and then the emperor gets killed, and Maximus runs away, and they kill his family and all that, right? And the whole movie is about him coming back and regaining his glory and killing the person who killed the emperor and his family, right? Who is now the emperor. So I was watching it, and it was heavy, 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 and then boom, all of a sudden, flipped us out and took us to Rome, to the Senate. Just gave us a completely different change. We had not been, in the movie, we had not been to Rome before. So we now got to go to Rome, we got to see the new emperor, we got to see the Senate, just a complete, total, and absolute, like, you know, having ginger after sushi, right? Just a palate cleanser. And the other really cool thing about a B story, so it is the thing that causes your main character to learn better, right? If you think of a story in simple debate terms, you have a thesis, an antithesis, and then a synthesis, right? The way would be the protagonist, the antagonist, and then the resolution, what we walk away with in the end, right? Thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. And in a story, it's the B story that causes that middle to happen. You have your protagonist, you have your antagonist. Now your antagonist will never change. That's why they're an antagonist. They don't change with times, they don't learn, they don't grow, they don't have an arc. Protagonist is the one that does learn and grow throughout the story. The thing that causes them to learn and grow is usually that B story. It's that second world that we've been introduced to, and as time goes on, those two worlds, and I don't have my other hand because I'm holding the phone, those two worlds collide and they learn from one another. So in a lot of movies, it's a love story of some kind, generally, and you'll hear the B story referred to as a love story, even if it's not romantic love or even love of any kind. A lot of times it can be like a partnership, right? Again, I used Indiana Jones earlier, and I think of it, and in Indiana Jones, the B story is the story of the dad's journey, Sean Connery's journey. And then at the end, what happens? Indiana Jones reconciles with his dad, right? Because they kind of went back and forth with each other. He reconciles with him, they learn from one another, and it is actually the death, or the near death, the pending death of the dad that caused Indiana Jones to actually learn, for his character to grow, and for him to beat the 3 tests at the end. Without that B story, he would never have beat the test. He would have died immediately.
Hi there. So, future Kendall here. Just jumping in again. We're getting a little late on time, so I thought I would help kind of put a bow on this and wrap it up. I did want to share 2 insights that this really fun technique of Storycraft, I think, has shared with me about people. Two little insights there. So, the first is thinking of the B story, right? It seems inherent in our stories that we value collaboration. Like, it just seems inherent that there is this whole structure, this whole convention that is basically your antagonist or your protagonist, your main character, your hero, is living his life. And it actually is the influence of something else that by the end makes them better, improves them, makes them more valorous or honorable or whatever the value is. And I think we do that for a reason, because we want to share those values, right? And so one of those values, I think, is the collaboration always makes us better. The second thing I thought was quite unique, that I thought talked a lot about humanity's values, and that is antagonists don't change. You know, as Past Kendall said a couple minutes ago, they don't change. So if you watch any Indiana Jones comic book movie, right? Think of these big blockbusters just because they're going to be very formulaic for the most part. So they're going to have all these things. But even smaller films, the antagonist, the evil guy, right? The evil person, the villain. 9 times out of 10, when they die, they are literally searching for the thing that they started the movie, the story, searching for. Right? When the Nazis get their faces melted off, it's because they are seeking the thing that they were seeking from the very beginning. Whereas our hero never is searching for the same thing that they were at the beginning. Right? So our story suggests that human culture values collaboration, and we value growth and learning. And what we don't value, what we think leads us to bad things in the end, is stagnation, is staying the same. The world around is changing and you stay the same. And I find that very interesting. but Storycraft does reveal something about our society that is important to know, and these were two things that I saw and I wanted to share. I'm curious what you think. Am I missing the boat on this? Is there something else? You know, confirmation bias is a terrible thing, so sometimes, you know, I might get an assumption in my head and then just find things that support that. So I'm curious what your thoughts on Storycraft and culture are. What do stories tell you about our shared experience? I am very curious about that. All right, for next episode, should I keep going on Storycraft? I mean, so the next thing that in Storycraft is I can take the 3 acts, and you actually can divide it down into 4 parts and talk about the beats. They're actually, so this is the beat theory by Blake Snyder. And so I could break down the 3 acts into the 15 different beats, which would probably be the most concrete skill that I would have shared so far in this series. Like a little, like if you were actually thinking of writing a book, that episode you could probably use to start, if I do it right. So I'm thinking of doing that, but I also am wondering if I should switch it back up and go back to Abram and kind of share more about Abram. I don't want to stay hot and heavy for super long, so I don't want to stay on these very heavy subjects, but you know, like slavery, like go back to it so quickly. But what do you guys think? All right, let me know. Have fun. Take care. I don't have my mask with me, but wear your mask 6 feet. Oh, stay 6 feet away from everybody. Keep your mask on when you're out from your home. Help other people. Be a good steward of the other folks in this country. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day. Bye.